Donald Trump Whigs who were supporting him here, and British people, not just American people as well. And they said, yes, he may have an abrasive style, but you've got to look beyond all this personality stuff to look to policies like North Korea, or what he's doing to NATO to get them to spend more money, or what he's doing in the United States with the appointment of Supreme Court judges. They say he's a complex man, and that you shouldn't just take him at face value, which is what he accuses people of doing here. But the people here are extremely sophisticated, the anti-Trump protesters. They know why they've turned out. Many of the supporters saying Donald Trump is not welcome because of those misogynistic and racist views. Many of the posters here, very subtle, very funny, very peaceful protest here. You can see a lot of police behind me, but they really haven't been wanted at all here. There was one protester who got onto a wall a little bit earlier. The police left him to it, and he eventually climbed down. So very much a peaceful protest, a constructive protest, if you like. The people here know they're not going to see Donald Trump, but as one woman put it to me tonight, she hopes that he wakes up, because he's on American time on his body clock, sometime in the middle of the night, and turns on the news channel or BBC News and sees these crowds, and will get the message that way. Again, she thinks that would be a good end to this evening, even though they haven't seen him themselves. So slightly frustrating, they didn't get to see him. Some of them were hoping to catch a glimpse. That didn't happen. But they certainly feel as though they've vocalised their message that Mr. Trump, the American president, is not wanted here.
Oh yes, you're quite right, Duncan. He's a voracious consumer of the cable news channels, of course, and he will see these pictures if he's tuning into the American broadcasters this evening. And yes, you're right, there is a huge police presence here. Lots of police along the A44 in Oxfordshire going into Woodstock this evening. You're watching BBC World News. Let's just go back to Duncan outside the gates of Blenheim Palace, because tomorrow, Duncan, that is when the main events will take place, the main protests, and of course we are going to see that blimp that we've heard so much about, the flying Trump baby, which will be tethered somewhere near Parliament Square. Oh no, I think we've lost Duncan. Have we lost Duncan Kennedy? Yes, we have. Well, let me pick that up with James Boyes, who's standing behind me. I mean, I was just saying that there is going to be much more protests tomorrow, but again, I suspect, given that he's at Chequers and then he'll be later at Windsor, he's going to be kept well away from it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. This trip has been choreographed down to the most fine detail between the Secret Service and the Metropolitan Police and Thames Valley Police here to make sure that the President gets as a warm a welcome as possible from those official dignitaries who he's here to see. But he's kept as far away from possible from those protesters, some of whom we've seen in the background today being bussed in here to Blenheim. But certainly I think if this had been taking place in central London, such as George W. Bush's visit when he came at the height of the Iraq War, we saw almost a lockdown effective in central London with tens of thousands of protesters on the streets. Quite clearly, I think those looking to protest Trump's visit have been frustrated in their ability to make their voices heard, at least to the President directly. Although I understand they're going to try and keep him awake outside the ambassador's residence outside of Windsor.
Yes, with this wall of noise. Absolutely. They're going to play the cries of children towards him, reminding him about the children, of course, who've been separated from their parents at the Mexican border. And a lot of the placards that we saw here today as people walked past us was "Free the children, don't lock up our children," that sort of message from the protesters. I was interested, you said earlier that it's not a given, a state visit for an American president. I wonder if the British government reacted too quickly in extending the invite for a state visit in their desperation after Brexit and the Brexit vote. Do you think that's what happened?
I think that perhaps what happened, Theresa May got the honour of being a very early visitor to the White House, and I think that there was a desire to basically hug Trump close, to quote Bill Clinton when he was asked how on earth to deal with George W. Bush, and to make sure that relationship got off to a good start. Did she overextend that invitation? Possibly, but let's be honest about it. It's very much in Great Britain's interest, as well as the interest of the United States, to make sure that the relationship stays strong and special moving forward, quite frankly, whoever the President of the United States is at any given moment.
And just very quickly, Winston Churchill, very much the focus tonight. What would he make of Donald Trump? Because he himself was a disruptor.
It's important to not overstate this, but let's not forget that Churchill himself was someone who very much antagonized individuals, someone who made the latest use of technology, someone who wasn't afraid to throw a barbed line in on very many occasions. It is indeed that retort that many people look back on with some regard for Churchill, but of course he was not a beloved figure by many in his own party at the time.
Okay, James, stay with us. Thank you very much for the moment. Let's cross to the newsroom, because waiting for us is Dr. Swati Dhingra, an economics lecturer at LSE. And Mr. Dhingra, we should probably talk, Mr. Dhingra, I should beg your pardon, we should probably talk about the dinner this evening at Blenheim Palace. 150 CEOs there. What sort of message do you think they are going to be conveying to the President when they sit down with him?
I think one of the things we've heard about already is them talking about the trade war that's going on, but more importantly, what's going to happen after Brexit if there's going to be a UK-US deal. What's that going to look like? And I think it's really important to know the sort of people who've accepted the invitation that we've heard about, Rolls-Royce, Goldman Sachs, these are sectors which are expecting to gain something if there is a UK-US trade relationship later. But we must keep in mind that these are also the sectors which are likely to gain, that are being represented out there. There are many other constituencies in the economy which are not getting a say quite yet, and where there are really, really tricky issues to be dealt with if there is going to be a UK-US partnership.
And Dr. Dhingra, when you look at what he's just announced in the last few days, this new raft of tariffs that he's threatening, $200 billion of tariffs on China, that is a step that takes us well beyond where we are at the moment. Could that take us into a global trade war?
I won't predict whether that will take us into a global trade war or not, but I think this is definitely stepping it up. Earlier, the fraction of exports that were hit globally, and particularly in the EU, that includes the UK, were much smaller. Going forward, if that's being scaled up, there's already been a warning by Cecilia Malmström, who's the EU Trade Commissioner, saying that potentially there can be tariffs imposed on cars, and that's going to now become really important for countries like the UK, Germany. So once again, then we might see some kind of escalation of tariff wars.
I read today that Baroness Martha Lane Fox, who is the founder of lastminute.com, was invited to this dinner. She said, "I can understand why the British government would have to entertain the American president, but I don't have to." Do you think some of the business leaders who've gone along tonight, and not all of them have made it public that they're there, had their doubts about whether they should go?
I think definitely. We already heard the BBC report earlier that Tata Steel was planning not to go for the reason that they are upset about the steel tariffs that are being imposed on them. So in that sense, it does reflect the people who are attending versus the people who have declined. There seems to be this bifurcation across who is going to benefit from Trump's trade policies and who aren't.
Dr. Swati Dhingra, thank you very much indeed for being with us and sharing your thoughts on the dinner that is taking place at Blenheim Palace this evening. Let's talk a little bit about tomorrow, James, because there's an early meeting with him and Theresa May. They're going to a military base. They're going to see, first of all, US and UK special forces putting on a demonstration for them, but then it's the meat of the visit at Chequers. What do we expect will come out of it?
There's no doubt about it. I think that both Theresa May and Donald Trump are going to be talking about trade. It's in both their interests. Donald Trump has campaigned talking about making America great again. He needs to do that by increasing exports. The United Kingdom is one of the largest, the second largest individual country for American exports, coming to some $60 billion, quite frankly, a vast market. It's important to recognise also that you're going to get the idea of America talking about a Brexit deal, a bilateral deal between the United Kingdom and the United States as soon as possible after the Brexit. It's in Theresa May's political interest, vital point at this point, considering where she's been this week with the resignation of the Foreign Secretary and David Davis.
Okay, James, stay with us. We'll pause for a second. Beautiful evening here in Oxfordshire. We're on the eastern edge of the Cotswolds, but what is it looking like around the rest of the country? Let's find out with Chris Fawkes, who's got the weather for us.
Hello again. For many of us, it's been another fine and dry day, warm again with temperatures into the mid-20s, but it will get warmer than that over the next few days. Mind you, there have been a few scattered showers around, notably across Wales and southwest England. They'll slowly fade away as we head through this evening to leave largely dry conditions overnight. A temperature similar to last night, between around 11 and 14 or 15 degrees for most of us, so reasonable for getting a decent night's sleep in. On into Friday's forecast, a very similar day of weather Moderate clouds to start the day for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but brightening up with some sunshine. Sunny skies to start the day across much of England and Wales, but we'll see some showers develop. And again, those showers are going to turn heavy, and this time thundery, stretching down from Dumfries and Galloway, down the western side of England and Wales, into the South Midlands and central southern England too. These showers and thunderstorms capable of bringing about half a month's worth of rain in the space of an hour, so there is a risk of some localised flooding, but away from the showers, it will feel a little bit warmer. That's your weather.
There are many movies out at the moment that are claiming to be comedies. This beats all of them. And on the one hand, it's a political tale. On the other hand, it is a magic realist fable. It is baggy and overlong. You can either just see it as a really good popcorn adventure or as something much deeper. That's what a proper cult movie looks like. My problem with it is I wanted it to be darker. The script is laughable, but not in a good way. It's just proved so divisive. I was reminded of the friendship between Elliot and E.T. Every time anyone says mockumentary, immediately you think, is it as good as Spinal Tap? The answer is no. Very smartly reinvented a franchise, and who thought that was possible? It does the thing that cinema is meant to do at its very best, to completely immerse you, to transport you, to take you to another world.
Words of Wisdom, the film review, tomorrow at 5:45 on the BBC News Channel.
Rain. Sounds like Wimbledon. Watch it live on BBC TV and on BBC iPlayer. And for a greater choice of courts and matches, watch live across BBC Sport online.
Hello, good evening. This is BBC News with me, Julian Warwick. Time for the latest headlines now. President Trump has arrived in the UK for his first official visit since taking office. The Prime Minister is hosting the American president at a lavish dinner